belief in the investor community was that the festive season will help clear off the inventory, if not bring about sales back in a large way for consumer discretionary. Autos, components, durables and the likes. Has that happened in specific pockets wherein like air coolers or air conditioners, for example, wherein the summer or the monsoon was a bit more extended, and has that dampened the sentiment at all? Let's talk about all of these factors and more with Symphony, and Achal Bakeri of the company joins us right now to talk about that and more. Mr. Bakeri, good having you. Thanks much for taking the time out. Just a brief off the bat before we talk about Symphony at large. This whole belief about inventory getting cleared and new stock coming in and therefore helping the companies. How have the last 5 months been? I won't just compare October to October because last year the festive season was in the month of November. So if we just look at the last 4 or 5 months, extended monsoons, a split festive season, and the growth numbers in India not looking all that great. How has that impacted or not impacted the air cooler industry?
Well, fortunately for us, all this happened post the summer. So the summer sort of ended in June, and we had a bumper summer. So not only us, but the entire channel has pretty much exhausted all their inventory. There has been, I would say, very good restocking of inventory in anticipation of an equally good summer into 2020. So these months, the last 5 months, have been pretty much, I would say, the off-season months for air coolers. And there is not much activity, not much sale, tertiary sale that happens to the end user in these months. So it is really more the channel which stocks up. But because they had a good summer in 2019, the expectations are, that they will also have a good summer in 2020. The mood is very buoyant amongst our channel. So we've had a very good, last 5 months. So even last quarter, the quarter that ended in September, we had about 101% growth over the same quarter of the previous year. But again, the previous year was the base effect issue, because the previous quarter, the same quarter of the previous year was a bad quarter for us. But notwithstanding all of that, I think we've sort of had a very good year so far from April till now.
Yeah, well, it did show in the way your quarterly numbers shaped up, and we were talking to Nupesh about it, and the confidence was showing. Has it percolated into the quarter? And of course, you are no longer just a domestic company, so we'll talk about the global perspective as well. But has it percolated in India, as far as India goes, into the months of October and November as well, Mr. Bakeri?
Absolutely, absolutely. The sort of the trend continues, and so up until December, it is the channel which really by and large stocks. It is from January onwards. From January to June is when the tertiary buying happens, so that depends a lot on how high the temperatures are and how soon the temperatures get high. But so far, up to December, these 2 quarters, July to December, this half looks pretty good.
You, I think, made a few new launches as well, Mr. Bakeri. Can you tell us a bit more about this? Is it normal course of practice, phasing out older models and starting out new models, or do you anticipate a market share gain or a better summer and therefore more sales, even if the gains don't happen because the industry at large might just grow, the organized to unorganized play might all function? What's happening here?
Well, as a matter of practice, over the years, Symphony has always been introducing new models every year. And every year, it typically happens in the month of July. So that's when the off-season buying happens for the summer of the summer to follow. So in July 2019 as well, Symphony introduced a whole range of new models. Like we did every year in the past, what we have done is we've introduced a couple of entirely new ranges, as well as refreshed many of the existing ranges. And the need to do that is, one is our constant thirst for innovation. Secondly, always we have an internal saying that our rate of innovation has to be greater than the rate of copy. And because many of our models have been copied ad nauseum, so for example, we have a very successful range called the Diet range, which we launched about 10 years ago, but it had been refreshed over the years. but has been copied now in the last 3-4 years by every competitor. So we have gone in for a completely new diet range, not just a refresh, but a completely reimagined diet range. Likewise, we have another range called Sumo, which goes back 20 years. It has, of course, seen many avatars over the years, but in that too, we have completely have a brand new range of models under that sort of sub-brand, multiple models, and some models are really, I would say, cutting edge, some likes of which India has never seen before. A double-decker cooler, for example, so you have air blowing from the top and the bottom. Products like these have never been seen in this country before. So we have really launched a whole range of very exciting models in the off-season for the summer of 2020. These models have received fantastic response from the trade, and the response from the trade is really an indication or an indicator of what the end user response is likely to be. And if the trade is exuberant, if the trade has confidence in the range, then they will buy, and if they have bought, then they will make sure it is sold. So we have had a very good start for these new models, new introductions, and we are very confident that these will sell very well in the summer.
How do you expect the growth rate in the Indian business to be, Mr. Bakeri? And I'm not talking just about the next quarter or thereabouts. That you already told me that it's looking okay. How do you anticipate growth rates to be? Most people say that with the overall GDP growth rates coming off, the expectation of growth from all discretionary consumption companies should also come off. What's your guesstimate about Symphony or about the air cooler industry?
See, as far as the household cooler range is concerned, that would probably be more tied with the overall economy, but more specifically to the weather conditions. So if we have a great summer, then the growth could be anything. And as far as commercial and industrial coolers are concerned, like I said, it's very nascent. We are in the process of building a category, so which could add meaningfully to the overall top line of Symphony. So there, I think the economy would, or the impact of economy would be sort of marginal or insignificant. Because the base is so small, or there is no base. But again, I wouldn't really hazard a guess here and spell a number, because at this point in time, it could be anybody's guess. I don't know myself.
Okay.
But like I said, at the moment we have one engine firing, one cylinder firing. Going forward, we will have 3.
Okay, just one quick follow-up regards to domestic business. The last time that we spoke, which was about a year ago, you said that the whole GST move was slated to ensure that manufacturing moves from the unorganized to the organized, the illegal to the legal. And you said that it was still not quite happening in the way it should have happened. Have things changed, and are you in a better shape as an organized player or as an organized industry to wean away further market share from the unorganized space? Is that happening right now as we speak?
Unfortunately not only for Symphony, but for the entire cooler category, but even for, I would say, generally for all products, this quite hasn't happened. So that shift from the unorganized to organized because of GST hasn't quite happened as anticipated, because people have found ways of circumventing GST. In fact, a couple of days ago, it was in the papers itself, how there are these revenue leakages which the government is trying to plug. So that shift that was anticipated hasn't quite happened.
Well, let's hope it happens sooner rather than later. Just a quick word, Mr. Bakeri, on the global businesses as well. Now, almost everybody seems to believe, I mean, in a manner of speaking, for the Australian market, it's a bit of a first-time showing for you. How do you anticipate the response in that market, and what about the other global subsidiaries? How are they performing?
Sure. Now, when we acquired Australia, we had certain projections and expectations which for us were shared with by the management, the erstwhile owners, and the existing management of that company, which we had shared with investors. Now, unfortunately for us, in the first year itself, they faced a summer which was not very favorable. So the summer sales, or the sales of air coolers, did not quite happen as expected. But the winter was good. So the shortfall in summer or in cooler products was made good by winter products. But winter products or heaters are, have a lower margin than coolers in Australia, and as a result of which, whereas they more or less made the top line numbers, the bottom line was impacted at the EBITDA, at the operating margins level, and there was, of course, some of these, other effects below the operating margin of revaluation of inventory and some interest income, which was interest cost, finance costs, which are related really more to do with the acquisition funding than with any working capital requirements. But those were all below the line. But even at the EBITDA level or the operating margin level, there was a softening, primarily because of the model mix. But we are off to a good summer so far this year. They are entering into the summer, and we are off to a good summer. And we hope that we should that the summer should go off very well, and our margins should be back on track. And moreover, we have initiated several measures to improve the operations of the company, to bring down the cost of goods sold as well as cost of doing business. So next year itself, from April 20 to March 21, we should see, even for the same level of top line, we should see a significant jump in the bottom line because of these other measures that we have undertaken. And in the year after, it should get even better once the full impact of all the measures that we have undertaken are felt. So whereas the top line, Australia is a mature economy, and there are 3 dominant players in coolers and heaters, and they have more or less a 1/3 share in each category. And one of those players is our subsidiary. So whereas we don't expect the top line to grow by leaps and bounds, it will be probably in the low double digits. But the bottom line should improve significantly. But to help improve the top line, what we are adding is a range of products from India, portable household coolers,
sure,
which Climate Technologies had never sold in Australia in the past. So we are using Climate Technologies as an access to the Australian markets for coolers to be exported from India.
Okay.
And then comes the subsidiary of Climate Technologies in the US, where we have a very small base. We have just about a $6 million business, or just about 2% of the US market, and where we expect the growth to be much higher than in Australia. There, so far, Climate Technologies had only been selling to Home Depot, which is the America's and the world's largest home improvement store company. So leveraging on that relationship, we are also going to be selling portable coolers from China, from our Chinese subsidiary in the US. And moreover, because of the product portfolio of Symphony and China, Climate Technologies is now going to also access Lowe's, which is the second largest home improvement stores company in the US, and also Amazon in the summer of 2020.
Okay. So, Mr. Bakeri, paucity of time, one last question. As you look at the business, both globally and locally, and look at Symphony's growth rate, not now, but over 5 years. I remember a conversation a few years back when you had mentioned that CAGR growing about 35-40% would not be an issue for a few years, and you did that. Then there was a bit of a lull. From here on, because of the global nature, what do you anticipate growth rates to look like, CAGR, over, say, a 5-year period?
At the consolidated level, with the subsidiaries, with the commercial coolers and industrial coolers also kicking in, I think we should be able to, if not in the next year, but a year later or so, we should be able to, go back to our erstwhile CAGR rates. So, beginning with 20-25%, it could even be 35-40% going forward. Falling in place, they are falling in place now, then we should be able to revert back to our historical CAGR.
Okay, we wish you all the best for that, Mr. Bakeri. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.